G'day everybody. Quick video today just on injectors, and specifically injectors if you are going to put a new set of injectors in one of these. This is an 05 RAM 3500 with the 5.9 Cummins. This is a common rail engine, no EGR, no DPF, no DEF, but it is a common rail engine. And you'll find a lot of videos detailing, if you've got a vehicle that's hard to start, you might need to change your injectors out. Now, if you've got injectors to change, that's fine. There's videos to show you how to do it, but if you're a home mechanic, can you actually expect to do it easily enough just with the tools you have in the shed? Is it a job that a home mechanic can undertake? So I've changed injectors before. The last set of injectors I changed out was on a Australian PK Ranger. That's a 4-cylinder 3-litre turbo diesel. And at the time I didn't have a scan tool that could code injectors, so I could only do part of the job. But I was able to fit them, and I had to take them to someone with a scan tool who could code them for me. Now I have a scan tool that can code injectors, but I haven't had any experience with changing injectors on this engine. So attacking it cold, only armed with instructions from the internet and a workshop manual, how hard is it to do, and can you be confident of doing this yourself? Now this would apply to a reasonable degree to the 6.7. If you've got the follow-up 6.7, the injectors I bought for this would also fit that. So it may have some applicability there, although the layout is a little different, but lots of commonality there. So what was difficult, and is it a job that you could actually undertake if you're a home mechanic, do it yourself? So I did manage to get it all done. It took me, I actually didn't get it done in a day. If you had a solid day where you could apply to doing the job, you would get it done in a day. I didn't. I had to stop early because of other work commitments, and I wasn't able to allocate the whole day. So it took me a day and a bit, but a solid day, if you've never done it before, allocate the whole time to work on it, you should get it done in the day, even coming in cold. So things that you'll need, outside of the usual stuff, Allen keys, sockets and ratchets. I did use ratchet spanners, so a set of spanners, pry bars. They're nothing really specialty there, but you're going to need them. The only specialty thing that maybe not everyone does, although if you're a home mechanic and you're doing regular work on your car, you probably will have a torque wrench. You will need a torque wrench for this job, and you'll need one that has torque settings low enough to get to the required torque on various components on the engine as you're pulling things apart. Now, putting things back together again, you're going to need not just a set of injectors, you're going to need a set of injector tubes, and the recommendation is you change your injector lines as well. So what I did, I'm in Australia. I've had a couple of go-to sources for RAM parts since I've owned this vehicle. They've principally been Amazon, and in terms of the bulk number of parts, I've bought Rock Auto. So rockauto.com, Amazon have been my go-to for parts for this. Putting new injectors in this, you have a couple of options. You can up your injector capacity and go to some high horsepower injectors, or alternatively you could get some remanufactured factory injectors from Bosch or whomever, or you can go brand new. So reading some anecdotal feedback from forums online, I decided to go brand new, especially because the difference in price between Reman Bosch injectors, I wanted to go with Bosch injectors, Reman Bosch injectors, new Bosch injectors, there wasn't a whole lot in it. And I actually managed to get a kit which included the injector lines, the connector tubes and the injectors all in one, which I got from injectorsdirect.com. Now a little caveat, if you are ordering injectors from injectorsdirect.com and you're from Australia, I wasn't able to order from Injectors Direct unless I turned my VPN on and change the country to the US. It would not allow me to order injectors just running a standard browser without the VPN on, or with the VPN set to Australia. So I tried to order with the VPN set to Australia, then I turned my VPN off, and then by changing it to the US, you can select Australia. The process was very easy, very seamless. I did have to contact Injectors Direct for support while going through the ordering process. They were very helpful, and I got my injectors within a week. So similar speed to Rock Auto, and I found the price very competitive even with shipping. I did opt to send my injector cores back to get a refund, which I did. So it cost me about $100 US to get the injectors, the injector lines and the connector tubes here. I think it was $99.99 pretty much US shipping. To send them back, to send back my cores, you don't have to send the injector lines or the connector tubes back, you just have to send your injector cores back. To send the injector cores back cost me $90 Australian, and for which I received a refund of $600 US for the cores that I'd sent back. So for the sake, you're going to pay the shipping to get them here anyway, but for the sake of $90 Australian to send them back, that was via Australia Post. That's a small price to pay really to get $600 US back credited to you. So that's who I ordered it from. I paid full retail, nothing exchanged hands between me and Injectors Direct. It was just a firm I found online. They had brand new Bosch injectors, and the thing that swung me over to order from them was the fact that they could supply the kit with both the connector tubes and the fuel lines at a marginal cost increase over having to buy the whole set. So that worked out pretty well, and because of the speed of shipping inbound, like it was 7 days to get it to me, and then sending it back, $90 Australian to send them back. It took about 3 weeks going the other way before I got my advice that they'd been received, and then I got my refund. So a bit slow going the other way, but it all worked out and we got the job done. So torque wrench is really the only specialty thing that you're going to need. What you do, there's lots of really good videos showing you how to do this. All I really wanted to cover off on this video is there's a couple of things that I did which I thought made the job a little easier, but one thing in particular that you want to know that was problematic that I haven't seen covered, which is the purpose of the video. So if you're going to do it, you can find a video and do it, but you take the cover off, you take your air horn off, you take all this off, then you'll get to access to the fuel lines, the fuel rail and the connector tubes. You take the fuel lines off. You can take the whole fuel rail off. I did the fuel lines off method because I was changing the fuel lines anyway. Took the fuel lines off. There's a locking nut on your connector tube. You undo that, then you pull your connector tube out. These, looking at the dates, it's got the manufacture dates on the injectors. These injectors have never been changed. So this is about 200,000 Ks this thing has done, one owner vehicle. 200,000 Ks this thing has done. And pulling the injectors out, looking at the manufacture date and the manufacture date on the connector tubes, these are the original injectors. So it's done circa 200, 210 or something thousand Ks of motoring on the original injectors and connector tubes. The reason I diagnosed that it needed fault, I did a video a little while ago on hard to start, which I traced back to my fuel pressure relief valve, and I did a little video on how to test that. So you can check that out if you've got a hard to start problem. That solved the problem for a very, very good while, and then just recently I thought it was a little harder to start than what I figured it should be. And I planned when I bought this vehicle, I figured it would be on its original injectors. It had done 210 odd thousand Ks. I factored into the purchase price that I'm probably going to need to do injectors on it. So I kind of baked that into the cake. So I was just waiting for the time that it was opportune to change the injectors out. It became hard to start. I knew it wasn't the fuel pressure relief valve. I tested the fuel pump. I knew that wasn't it. It had a new, it gets its fuel filter changed all the time. I figured that I'd do basically a preemptive strike on the injectors before it leaves me stranded on the side of the road one day, so ordered the new injectors. So if you track back that you need that you've got a fault with your injectors, you need to change them out. You take all that out, so you pull your connector tubes out. You've got to get your connector tubes out before you pull the injectors out, because the connector tubes seat in the side of the injector. So you pull your connector tubes out, you've got to replace the connector tubes. Some people say I've noticed online that some people will say you can use your fuel injector lines if they're not rotted out, corroded or whatever. My injector lines were fine, but I chose to change them out anyway. So, but suit yourself. So you pull your fuel lines off, connector tubes out, and then you undo. There's two. You got to take your rocker arms off. Take your rocker arm off, and then there's two bolts that hold the injector in. Undo them. And then a little crow's foot pry bar is what I used. It's a gear wrench adjustable crow's foot pry bar, but any pry bar would pretty much work. I did pop two of them out just by hand, just boop. The others were in awkward positions, so I did actually pry them out to make it a little bit easier. Interestingly, my connector tubes, I've seen a few videos where they've had to put the connector nut back on and then pry them out with a pry bar, or put a set of vice grips on the threads and then pop them out. All 6 of my connector tubes just pulled straight out, no worries at all. Just by just using my hands, just pull and they just pop straight out. New connector tubes after change the injectors pop straight in by hand. So absolutely no reason to use a pry bar there in my situation. You've got a lot of corrosion in your engine bay, which admittedly I do not. There's no corrosion in this engine bay at all. It's extraordinarily clean. It's a vehicle that's always been shedded in Australia in a dry climate. There's no corrosion here at all. So that would have been a factor for sure, but I was able to pull all my connector tubes out by hand. And I reckon with a bit of, if I had to persevere, I could have pulled all my injectors out by hand as well. But I did use a pry bar on a couple. Oh, well, no, hang on, that's not true. Injector 5, I did try to pull it out, because I thought it'd be easy to get it out by hand, and I did need to use the pry bar to get it out. Anyway, crow's foot pry bar, pop, out they come. Really simple, you don't really need to put any undue pressure on the injector to get it out. So what I did, in changing them out, is I took the rocker arm off, and what a lot of videos do, they'll take all the rocker arms off, and then your rocker bridge, you take that off, and they'll lay it all out and label it so you know which one's which. I was a little bit concerned about that because I knew I probably wasn't going to get it done in the day, and I didn't want to come back overnight and forget, or maybe you walk into the shed and someone kicks something out of the way or whatever. So what I did was I took the rocker assembly for cylinder 1 off, pull the injector out, the connector tube out, pull the injector out, put the new injector in, connector tube in, torque it down. So when the torque method I used was not the one I saw from the original owner's manual, which is just put the injector in, put the connector tube in, then torque them down. It was staged. So you torque the injector, torque the connector tube, but not fully. Then you torque the injector again, then you torque the connector tube again, and you do it over a 2-stage process. That seems to make sense to me, that you're bringing your injector down level. You're not rocking it backwards and forwards. You're bringing it down level, and it will seat properly. That's the assumption. And the same with the connector tube going into the side of the injector. So I did use the progressive torque method, which most people seem to be pointing to now. Anyway, took the rocker arm off, put it aside, put the injector in, connector tube in, and then put the rocker arm back on again. So that concluded the process for cylinder 1. Cylinder 1 was done. And then did the same thing with cylinders 2, 3, and 4. And so pulled cylinder 2 rocker assembly off, changed the injector over, put the rocker assembly back on, then went to cylinder 3, and then so on, 1, 2, 3, 4. Done in that method. When I got to cylinder 5 is back under here, back under the flywall. Now, because it's back under the flywall, things start to get a little bit short on space. Now, I can't speak for all Rams of this era, but with mine, the conversion that has been done here to move everything from left-hand drive to right-hand drive, there's a couple of hoses which now go over the engine that look to me like they've been moved in the conversion. When they've moved the steering components over, they've moved things over to the other side of the engine. and now there's a couple of things that run across your cover here to go over to the other side of the vehicle. So if space wasn't already at a fairly, fairly premium, then even more so with those hoses wrapping across the top of the engine. So when I got to cylinder 5, I took cylinder 5 rocker assembly off and changed the injector, changed the connector tube, and then before I put the rocker assembly back on, I went and did cylinder 6. But even so, the most amount of rocker assemblies I had off the engine at once was 2, cylinders 5 and 6, and that's it. I was able to torque everything. I did the valve lash at the same time. Obviously, you're going to have to do that. The valve lash, I think that's one of the, if you've got one of these trucks, even you've got a 5.9 or a 6.7, one of the reasons, the principal reason I reckon is really good to go through this process is that if you don't know how to set your valve lash, or you've been lazy and you haven't set it for a long time, this will be the catalyst to learn how to do it, or to, even if you know how to do it, to make you do it. And then once you know how, it's pretty easy, it's not really difficult as is setting valves on anything, but it's not really difficult and it will make you do it. I had been meaning to get around to it since I bought this vehicle to set the valve lash because I didn't know when it was last done. But I've only owned it, I've owned it for a good while now, but I've only done about 10, 15, I don't even think I've done 20,000 Ks in it yet, maybe 10, 15,000 Ks. So while I've owned it for a long time, I haven't done a lot of kilometres in it. So I just hadn't got around to doing the valve lash yet, but I did it on this operation. I'll come back to that later on. Anyway, you do your valve lash, that's pretty straightforward. But doing that, and then when I go to put the rocker assembly back on after changing the injectors, I did 6, then I did 5, and 4 through 1 were already done, and that concluded that operation. Now, so the only really difficult thing, so when you're doing the valve lash, what I effectively ended up doing was, stepping up on my bar here and on the front bumper, and basically laying across the rockers to get to cylinders 5 and 6. And that's how I changed them out. You get a bit of oil all over you, make sure you've got things covered up, don't drop anything down your air intake. And I stuffed a rag in that a clean rag in it as soon as I started. But anyway, don't drop anything into your engine obviously, but effectively ended up lying over the top of the engine to get to cylinders 5 and 6 because it's a long way back, especially from the front of the vehicle. But the trickiest thing on doing this was setting the torque on the connector tube on cylinder 6, which is right back up under the firewall, right? The reason I had the difficulty to do that is because you need quite a large socket to get over the connector tube, and I've got a deflecting beam torque wrench, which is my go-to torque wrench. I've got a couple of torque wrenches, but that's my go-to torque wrench. It's certainly my most accurate. It's a 3/8 drive, and the only socket I had for the connector tube was 1/2 inch. So what I needed is I needed to go from a 3/8, I needed a 3/8 to 1/2 inch adapter, which just spaced that out just that little bit more. And I couldn't get it in, I couldn't get the socket on the connector tube before it hit the back of the firewall and then a steel plate that's behind the engine. I just couldn't get it on there for love nor money, even with a wobble bar. So what I ended up having to do is I used, I could have got a 3/8 drive socket so I could remove the adapter, and I probably could have got it maybe, but I couldn't get a 3/8 socket locally in that size, and I don't want to buy a socket just for one job that I'm rarely going to do. So what I ended up doing was I had to use my 1/2 inch drive torque wrench, and I did have to use a knuckle extension to get it done. So just to be aware, it is pretty tight back there, and if I didn't have that 1/2 inch torque wrench, I would have ended up having to buy one or going to get one off somebody else, because with the extension there was just no way it was going to happen. But I did get it eventually. That was the trickiest part of the whole thing. So perhaps you say it's not a big deal, but it was quite tricky to get that done. Again, it may be because of the conversion, because I haven't seen it covered on any North American videos, so it may be a symptom of the Australian conversion, that you just don't have enough room there to get it in. We did get it eventually, which is good, and got it all back together again. It's not a complicated job. It could be a daunting job, for sure, especially if you haven't done it before. But it was pretty simple, I've got to say. You know, no more difficult than any other injectors that I've changed out, and good discipline to change out that, to adjust and make sure the valve lash was correct. So, what are the results afterwards? You know, I remember I did a video a little while ago of changing out the suspension, putting some Bilstein 5100s in this truck, and saying how it just completely changed the dynamics of the truck. Changing the injectors, exactly the same. These injectors were, I'm glad I changed them. It was getting a little, it was cranking a little more than I would like. And I thought, yeah, I think the injectors are on the way out. Now it's literally chit, boom, away she goes. It starts absolutely straight away. Like, so, it's one of the fewest amount of cranks on a diesel I've ever had. Adjusting the valve lash has made a huge difference in the noise of the truck. Nothing against the prior owner, because I don't know, but just on the noise difference on driving this truck compared to what it was, I would suggest it either hasn't been done in a good while. Hopefully it has been done, because you're supposed to do it every 50. But it either hasn't been done in a very long time, or maybe it hasn't been done at all. But it's made a huge difference. It is so much quieter. Unbelievable. I wouldn't have thought it would have made such a difference. It's not nearly as cluttery as it used to be. Fuel economy is better, but you would expect that with brand new injectors. Obviously, you know, when you assemble it all, you want to clean out your fuel system. You want to clean out your fuel catcher drain, your water separator, put a new filter in it. I'm pretty good with my filters. I change them every service, which is way below the recommended Cummins rate for service for this engine. I do it every 10, which is way below what Cummins recommended service for the engine. But, and I do the fuel filter always at the same time. But, you know, look, good operation. You can handle it, I think, as a home mechanic. If you don't have a torque wrench, you can't do it. But if you do, it's pretty simple. You want to follow the instructions. You do want to take your time. That was the advice of one of the online videos I watched. That's probably the best advice I got. Take your time, work through it, make sure you do everything right. The problem with it, the reason that you wouldn't do this operation is because if you get something wrong, you could have really catastrophic effects. You really want to be careful. Like if you drop the copper washer inside the, you know, when you're pulling the injector out, if you drop that copper washer and didn't realise it, or you forgot, or it could be really bad. So, you know, if you're careful, you take your time, check and double check. Should be a pretty easy operation. Obviously, don't go outside your skill level. And really, the thing is, you want to make sure, you want to be a reasonable confident that you can do it. Because you don't want to pull it half down and then go, nah, this is beyond me. Because mechanics hate having to finish off somebody's work if they can't verify what's been done or what's not been done. And you're going to have to tow it to someone to finish off the job. So don't do that. But, you know, did it. It was not the hardest job I've done. It wasn't the easiest, but it was okay. So I believe you can do it as a home mechanic. Would I do it again? Sure. Obviously, next time I do it, I'd do it well under a day, because I know what I'm doing now, and that's how these things go. Once you've done it once, even if you've changed injectors, you've changed injectors on a particular engine, and you know the foibles and the little tricks of it, makes it a whole lot easier. I'd be well confident to change out the injectors in well under a day now. And you know, the process of ordering the injectors and sending them back to Injectors Direct wasn't that complicated. I was actually pretty content. And you know, in the context of owning a RAM in Australia, a lot of people I speak to, that's the principal thing they want to ask about. You know, what's it like owning it? How do you go for servicing? How do you go for parts backup? Parts backup is brilliant. It's only a couple of days out of the US, but you do have that lag. I acknowledge that. But the big thing continues to be, and this injector process is no different, that the thing about this truck that continues to be a huge plus is the huge knowledge bank online. Pretty much any task I've had to do on this truck, I can look online, find not only a description of how to do it, but multiple videos, watch them, and then go, yep, I'm confident to do that, bam, go away and do it. Notwithstanding some idiosyncrasies for the left hand to right hand conversion process. Notwithstanding that, that's been a huge plus and has really made owning this vehicle, I would say, as someone who services their own vehicles, owning this vehicle even better than pretty much any other vehicle that I've owned. Because the bank of knowledge and the information I can get on how to do things to the vehicle is broader than any vehicle I've owned before. So that's really good. And the principal thing is I'm owning this vehicle well after the dawn of YouTube. So YouTube just has thousands and thousands of videos on these trucks that do pretty much anything you could ever want to do, which is just fantastic. So there you go. I would do it if I was confident. If you're not, no harm to throw it to your local mechanic. As is owning one of these trucks in Australia, often your local mechanic can be a little bit, I don't really want to work on those RAMs, conversions, it'll be really difficult. They should be able to change out your injectors for you without any drama. And the huge plus when you're done, you don't have to code the injectors, which is great. I haven't given you any of the torque settings. I don't need to. They're written here. Your firing order, your torque settings are all on the Cummins sticker on the side of your cover here, so you can find that out for yourself. All your tolerances for your valve lash, again, are here. If your injectors are fine, if you've got a 5.9 and you've never and you've gone well over the recommended 50 for your valve lash, get in there and do it. Like speaking for this truck, it's made a massive difference. I'd fully recommend it. Anyway, that's what I wanted to cover off on today. I hope this was useful for you, and I thank you for watching.